Now, you asked me what I make of the spate of killings, insecurity, and kidnapping in recent times. Now, you have to understand that this is no big surprise. This is a Reverend Malthus's theory. It's a Malthusian theory, because if you remember Reverend Malthus, he said that where population far outgrows the production of a country, that there will be war, there will be famine, there will be disease, there will be insecurity. And we are seeing that Nigeria's population is one of the fastest growing populations of the world. Only, I think it's Niger Republic and one other country, I can't remember, has a higher growth rate than we do. So we have our growth rate in Nigeria is about 2.8%. Now, if you now cut the country into two and then you just take northern Nigeria on its own, then we have the fastest growing population in the whole world. But when you put northern Nigeria and southern Nigeria together, then it drops because the population growth rate in the south is slower. But here's the thing: Nigeria's growth rate is 2.8, but then our GDP is growing at a pace of 1.2%. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago, our GDP was even growing in negative. Well, it was negative growth, so it wasn't growing; it was contracting. So what you have is that you're having more mouths, and then you're having less food. So what's going to happen if you have that in your house as a father? If you have you had a job, and then you had 3 children, then you lost your job, and then now you have 6 children. Obviously, there's going to be turmoil in your house. There's going to be trouble in your house. Your kids will start stealing in the neighborhood. Your state will now become a nuisance, a menace to society, and that's what's happening in Nigeria. Unfortunately, President Muhammadu Buhari, look, I'm not trying to insult him, but he lacks the mental capacity to understand these complex economic principles, because this is a man who went to the Commonwealth last year and said that Nigerian youths are lazy. Nigerian youths are not lazy. I've been to all states of Nigeria. I'm a traveler, and you see Nigerian youths working. You go to Lagos today, you see Nigerian youths hawking on the street, hustling. I just got back from Cambodia, Thailand, and Singapore as part of my Free Leah Sharibu campaign. And you see Nigerians there. Nigerians are all over the world. Nigerians are anything but lazy. But this man says that our youths are lazy because he lacks the intellectual capacity to grasp what is happening in this country. Our population growth is far outweighing our GDP growth. And that is a Malthusian theory. It's not rocket science. Once you have that, there's going to be insecurity, there's going to be kidnapping, there's going to be all kinds of crime. And the way to do that is to address the root cause of it, and that's poverty. And how do you address poverty? You address poverty by attacking illiteracy. Because the more you learn, the more you earn. It's not the government's job to provide jobs for people, but it's the government's job to create an environment by which people can create jobs. And the way you do that as a government is to ensure that there is education. Former President Jonathan tried to scrap fuel subsidy. This current president, when he tried to do that, frustrated the efforts with members of his party now in power, the APC. Now Nigeria is spending something like 1 trillion every year on fuel subsidy. Now, the fuel that we used last year, we want it all up, it's all gone. But what if we used that money to educate Nigerians, to educate those 12 million children who are out of school in northern Nigeria? So what you're going to have is that you're going to have those people, instead of working hard, they'll start working smart. And then it's going to have an effect on the economy. But once you have those people, 12 million, just look at that, that's more than the population of some of Nigeria's neighbors, like Togo. And then you have those people, what's going to happen when they become adults? You think that we have insecurity now? You think that we have kidnapping now? You think that we have crime now? Wait until those 12 million children become adults. Now, you've asked me what my advice will be to the Muhammadu Buhari administration as regards tackling the insurgency. Now, I would advise them to learn from former President Jonathan and the late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. They should learn from them. What happens? We had an insurgency in the Niger Delta. Oh, I won't say an insurgency, but there was militancy in the Niger Delta. Nigeria's oil production was crippled to the point where we were only producing 600,000 barrels, and that was in 2007. But what's happening today, by 2015, when President Jonathan handed over to President Muhammadu Buhari, we were actually producing over 2 million barrels. What happened? It's because that administration of President Umar Musa Yar'Adua, and then it was followed up by President Goodluck Jonathan, they addressed a historical injustice in the Niger Delta. And then when they did that, then they now, because that's the addressing the historical injustice is a short-term plan. But then you also have to address some of the long-term plans, because you've got people who are now militarized, who are now belligerent. So you have to train them in ways of peace so that they can turn their swords to plowshares. So what President Muhammadu Buhari should do actually is to address the historical injustice that led to the start of this insurgency in the Northeast. Muhammad Yusuf, the founder of the group that is now called loosely Boko Haram, that's not really their name, but let's just call them Boko Haram. He wasn't a violent man. He wasn't a violent man. This man was an Islamic scholar, because I've read the Quran. I'm a pastor ordained, but I've also read the Quran, so I have a lot of respect for my counterparts on the other side. Muhammad Yusuf was an intellectual. He was a scholar, and then Boko Haram, they were not violent until the Nigerian police force killed this man. I believe they killed him sometime. I believe it was towards the end of 2009, or maybe I think it was towards the end of 2009. They killed this man, and so, if the Nigerian government will address that historical injustice, get the policemen that were involved in that, arrest them, try them, convict them, and then send them either to jail or, you execute them, or whatever the law provides. And then when the people who are behind this insurgency, the insurgents who are called Boko Haram or the Islamic State in West Africa province, when they see that this injustice has been addressed, then it's going to affect their ability to recruit in the local population. Because, the local people are going to tell them, okay, why do you want to keep on fighting the government of Muhammadu Buhari when the government has addressed your injustice? Why do you want to keep on fighting them? So that's one thing that you have to do. Then when you do that, then maybe you say, I'm giving you 6 months, a general amnesty. All those who have been involved in this, there's going to be a general amnesty. You surrender your weapons. Surrender your weapons within 6 months. And then we will look the other way. Not only that, we will not abandon your fighters. We will train them. We will help them get skills that they can use to practice peacetime professions. And then you do that, and then maybe some of them who say, okay, well, we are not happy. You tried the people who killed our leader. What about his family? Then you give compensation to the Yusuf family. Now, once you've done that, you've addressed the historical wrong that was done to these people when their leader was killed. And so you rob them of any recruiting tool, and then you give them that 6 months to lay down their weapons. Once you've done that, then if they do not accept that, then you begin an onslaught. So what you do is that you choose certain cities in the Northeast, and then maybe you call them sanctuary cities, and then you call the local population, and you say, go into these cities, do not leave these cities. And then you make them stay there, and then you go systematically from city to city to wipe these people out. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to always end militarily. Because I was in Israel, I think last year in November, and I did a pilgrimage, and then while I was there, I went to the Holocaust Museum, I went to other museums, and you see the kind of progress that Israel has made. They had parties, Yasser Arafat's party and other violent and belligerent groups among the Palestinians. But then these parties, they accepted peace, they embraced peace, and then they formed political parties. Look, what I'm going to say is going to sound very outlandish, it's going to sound very radical, but look, you tell Boko Haram, instead of fighting, why don't you convert to a political party? And then you advance your purposes, your aims, and your objectives peacefully through this political party. They can become local government chairmen in Borno in the Northeast. They can even become governors if they surrender and then accept peace. It's happened in Northern Ireland. The Good Friday Accord. Now, what's happening in Ireland? You see that there's peace there. Jerry Adams and his people, they are now in government. We can also do that in Nigeria. We can teach the world how to make peace. Marking Leah Sharibu's birthday is very important to me because it shows that she hasn't been forgotten. I've been to 19 countries since this year. I've actually been to more, but in 2019, I've been to 19 countries. I've met with VIPs all over the world. 3 weeks ago, I was with Boris Johnson, the former UK Foreign Secretary, who might emerge as the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And after that meeting, the Pope called President Buhari. So it's really important. It shows that Leah has not been forgotten, and then it makes her valuable to her captors. And the more valuable she is to her captors, the more likely that she is not going to be killed. And we are praying that by this time next year, we'll celebrate her birthday live with her parents. Well, I think the government can do a whole lot better. They can do a whole lot better. I mean, we know for a fact that the current Minister of Defense said he had back channels to Boko Haram. The government has back channels, and so they could do a lot. We got privileged information yesterday, as a matter of fact, that Boko Haram are ready to negotiate. You know, it was, in fact, I wouldn't say it's privileged information. It was released by the AFP, the Agence France Presse. So we know that they are ready to negotiate. The government should negotiate for the release of this girl, because this girl is not being kept because she's a girl or because of anything. She's being kept because she has refused to abandon her faith in Christ. And you know, it's not a very good thing for Nigeria to have that classification. I don't think the government is doing enough. They could do a lot more. They could use those back channels. Recently, we saw a girl, Zainab Aliyu, who was suspected to have carried drugs into Saudi Arabia. Now, she said she didn't do it, but we saw the priority that the government, President Muhammadu Buhari, personally placed on Zainab's freedom. He put himself personally machinery in motion to get her released. Now, is it because Zainab Aliyu is a Muslim? And you know, we don't want to say these things. You know, I feel bad saying it, but we have to, when we see what's been happening, we are left with very little choice but to make these comparisons. The government could do a lot more, and I urge President Muhammadu Buhari that same sense of urgency that he showed with the case of Zainab Aliyu, he should show that to Leah Sharibu. Leah Sharibu was 14 when she was abducted. Now she's 16. You know, I've been going around the world, and I will still keep on going around the world. If the president thinks that this matter is going to go away quietly, it will not. As long as I'm alive, and as long as people of goodwill are alive, it will not go away quietly. You ask me, do I believe that the federal government should negotiate for her release? That's a moot question. This administration, the Muhammadu Buhari administration, has negotiated for the release of previous hostages. They negotiated for the release of some of the Chibok girls that they got. They didn't rescue those girls. They paid ransom. I have it in my book. I have it here. Facts. If the government doubts me, if they want to take me to court, I'll prove them. I'll disgrace them in court. We've got the evidence. They did negotiate for the release of some of these girls. Some of the Chibok girls escaped on their own, and then the rest that were gotten by this administration were not rescued. They negotiated, they paid a ransom for these girls. And what we are asking them to do is treat Leah no different. We want Leah to come out from there, because Leah is being held because she is a Muslim. And that's why I'm going around the world. I'm going around the world with my free Leah Sharibu clothing. I have them, various sets of them. That's all I wear. That's all I wear, you know. And I'm saying to you, in answer to that question, yes, I believe that the government should negotiate for the release of Leah Sharibu. You asked me how the government can prevent a repeat of this situation. You see, the reason why northern Nigeria right now is under an insecurity blanket is because that area, that part of the world, has the most number of illiterates per square mile. Now, it's not an insult if you're a northerner, it's just a reality. And that's the reason why former President Jonathan built 165 Almajiri schools in the north. He didn't build any in the south, he built all of them in the north, including 9 new federal universities. So there's no state in northern Nigeria that doesn't have a university courtesy of former President Jonathan. And there's no state in northern Nigeria that does not have at least 4 Almajiri schools. Now, if you do not arrest illiteracy, you're going to keep on arresting Nigerian youths for insecurity, because you obviously know the mind is a terrible thing to waste. Satan, the devil, finds work for idle hands. These people, you have in Kano alone 3 million children that are out of school. In northern Nigeria, you have a total of 12 million children that are out of school. I think it was last year, Nigeria overtook India as the #1 country with the most out of school children. Now, bear this in mind that India has 8 times our population. So it has to be a long-term strategy. This administration has been in power now for 4 years. They haven't built one single school. Go and verify that. Go and research that. I'm notorious, or I'm known for being in command of the facts. I research before I speak. I don't just speak anyhow. They haven't built one school. Now, how are you going to address this issue? You think you're going to do that with guns and bullets? These people, they're not afraid of dying. They want to die. They want to go to Al Jannah Fidausi, which is what the Quran calls paradise. And they think that if you kill them, that is the fastest way. Now, I've read the Quran, and I know that what their interpretation of the Quran is wrong. But the only way that they will know it is wrong is if you educate them. Because the more you know, the more you grow. And the more you grow, the more enlightened you become. So the way to prevent a repeat of this is to massively declare an educational emergency in Nigeria, particularly in northern Nigeria. It doesn't matter if you're spending money from the south in northern Nigeria, because I tell you what, if you don't educate northern Nigeria, a lot of this insecurity is going to come down south to southern Nigeria and then to other West African countries, and it's going to destabilize West Africa, just like Sierra Leone destabilized West Africa in the 90s.